Hello and welcome once again to the Sarcasm and Liberty live stream on YouTube on the Sarcasm and Liberty channel. I am your host, Mike Ursary, aka the Liberty Ginger. And with me once again, we have Tim, the Paleo Libertarian. We have the meme lord himself, Michael Leoncello, Captain Michael Leoncello. We have our anonymous friend from across the pond, the Pure Madness One, and making his return with us. He's been gone for about 2-3 months. I don't know how long you've been gone for. Amos Joseph, our HAPA friend. Welcome back.
How's it going?
Doing well. How about you?
Doing good.
Outstanding. We are glad to have you back, man.
Well, it's definitely awesome to be back talking to you guys, but we'll see if it's worth being back. I'm just kidding.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. We missed you. Anyway, now the last time we were doing this was last Wednesday, and it felt like a long time ago. And the reason why I say that is because since last Wednesday, so many things have happened. I mean, a lot has happened over a span of 7 days. You know, we are potentially, and I say potentially because it's never a guarantee, but we are potentially almost to the midway point of the Donald Trump era. We are almost to midterms 2018.
Of his first term, at least.
What?
10 episodes.
Of his first term. Oh, geez.
Well, it might just be the first term. He might be done in 2025. He might be done in 2021. We don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, you know, the future of Donald Trump in the White House is just as unpredictable as the present of Donald Trump in the White House. Now, you know,
it depends what the media
so many times, you know, since do what?
Depends what the mainstream media is going to do. If they keep attacking him, then you have a bigger chance of getting in again.
That is very true. That is very true. The media is going to play a big role in what happens going forward. Speaking of the media, though, you know, since the Donald Trump era started, there have been so many times where we've turned on the news, we've read the news, and we've kind of been staring at our screens and asking ourselves, is this really happening? So many times. And over the course of this past week, you know, we've been asking ourselves, is this really happening? Because as you all well know, that Vice President Mike Pence gave a speech at the Pentagon a few days ago talking once again about Space Force. Donald Trump also talking about Space Force. 2 days ago, actually no, yesterday, Gary Johnson announced that he is going to run for the Senate out of New Mexico. The Libertarian Party candidate dropped out. The Libertarian Party needed a candidate. They asked the former governor, Gary Johnson, if he would run, and it turns out that he's going to. Another time where we ask ourselves, is this really happening? The Unite the Right over the weekend held another rally, which about all of what 12, 15 of them showed up to. And then Antifa also made an appearance, attacked the media, attacked cops, doing all the usual things Antifa does. And then Chris Cuomo on CNN talking about, yes, Antifa is really as bad as the white supremacists they are fighting. Chris Cuomo, if you punch somebody in the face, you're violent and you're wrong. There's no false equivalency debate here. So the first point that we're talking about is this really happening? The second point, what does it mean going forward? What does this mean going forward? Space Force. What will it mean for Gary Johnson if he were to somehow win the Senate race? What does it mean for the Libertarian Party going forward? And then the third point that we'll talk about tonight is that maybe we all just need a timeout. Well, some people are going to take a timeout from Twitter on Friday. People on the left, it's not really a timeout. It's more of like a protest. They're upset because Twitter has not banned Alex Jones from their platform. So they're going to deactivate and say they're going to give Twitter 30 days to ban Alex Jones. And if they don't, they're going to delete completely. Well, that'd actually be kind of a welcome thing. I mean, you spend a normal day on Twitter and it's nothing but just chaos and arguing and bickering, and many people on the left do that. So it might be a good thing, but we all need a timeout. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and dive into the topics here. And we're going to start out, first of all, with Space Force. So, U.S. Space Command is about to become a reality. What do we think about this?
They should make the Stargate.
What's that?
They should make the Stargate.
Make a Stargate?
Yeah.
This is the thing. Everyone's like picturing this big sci-fi fantasy thing. Like everyone's getting all happy about it, and like that just kind of makes it worse because like now everyone's gonna be like, yeah, spend as much as you. We want Star Wars. We want real life Star Wars. We want real life Star Trek. Put all the money you want in it. I don't care. I mean I care, but you know.
Well, the thing is that, I was doing some reading up on Space Force today, and the whole thing about it is that they're worried because, China and Russia are said to be developing weapons that could destroy U.S. satellites. And so it's not. Now, I know that we made all kinds of jokes. We made lots of memes, and we have a lot of fun with this, talking about, conquering Mars, fighting aliens, setting up a colony on all these other planets, and but it's just a matter of, it's all about satellites. I was reading that about a decade ago, China developed a missile that they used to destroy one of their own satellites, I guess in a test firing. And they're saying that Russia is developing a laser that they could use, that they could deploy and destroy US satellites. So, and I was also reading that what this is that they would make a 6th branch and they would consolidate all of the Space Force assets from the Air Force, the Navy, and the Army and make it into one branch. How much is this going to cost? Well, all I've seen is going to cost, the only figure I've seen is billions.
Billions and billions and billions.
Yeah.
Billions upon billions, yes.
AKA basically infinity.
As increases every year, and then you're going to add. So we don't even have the money, so I don't even know how much it's gonna cost.
Well, that's the thing. I'm sure the Congressional Budget Office is probably going to come up with a figure as we get closer to Congress, bringing up the legislation to create this sixth military branch. But enough of all that. The real question here is, are we going to get lightsabers? Are we going to get laser blasters on our spaceships when we fight the aliens? Tim?
Well, see, I'm honestly thinking that with the Space Force, one of the first missions should be to explore Uranus. No, I guess not. What I'm considering with the Space Force here is, let's be honest. We currently do not have a way to get astronauts into space. That we are currently sending our astronauts basically hitchhiking on Russian shuttles. So we're going to go from not being able to put a man in space to somehow getting up there and defending our satellites.
Well, the thing is, it's not so much not being able to as they just shut down the shuttle program. Ever since they cut the budget of NASA, we pretty much, by way of saving money, we hitchhike with other groups. But with the Space Force, you never know how that budget's going to be amped up to the point where now you have military astronauts.
Well, the thing is that all of those shuttles have been decommissioned, so they're not even functional at this point.
Right. The shuttle program is only
going to pull one out of the Smithsonian and send it back up. It's not going to work that way. But you got to consider this: is that let's be honest here, with the satellites that we have in orbit, if they're struck by a big enough piece of space debris, they're done. So you really don't need anything up there more than just maybe a couple of baseballs, and you're going to destroy the satellite. So to protect them, they don't really need to do much more than put better shielding onto the satellites. Now, if the Russians or if you have the Chinese government decides that they're going to put something in space that's going to destroy our satellite, then it's really not that hard to do. And so this whole thing, I've seen some people that are thinking that maybe the reason why they're coming up with this is because they already have developed technologies that they want to now expose to the public and put it under the guise of, well, we developed this for Space Force. That I don't know about. But what I do know is that this will be a colossal waste of money. I think that this is just an excuse for the government to grow once again, to raise taxes, which it's inevitable that it has to happen because you can't fund something unless you're cutting money from a different program. And something the size of a Space Force is going to require some new taxation. There's no way getting around that. They can't just borrow more money to get into this, because the thing is that the United States is our biggest debtor right now is China. And I don't think China is going to say, yeah, I'm going to give you a loan so you can develop something that is potentially going to thwart our efforts in order to get rid of your satellites. So, you know, anybody that's really pro Space Force right now is pro bigger taxes, and it's just really stupid.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, we already have, you know, like I was saying before, we already have space assets within our military branches. So I don't understand why we need to consolidate all of that into a 6th branch and create, you know, an entire new, you know, create something new into the military budget. Considering how much money we already put into the military as it is. I just I don't understand why we need to do this, and it's not necessary, I don't think.
It's kind of a new way to basically expand upon the military machine, like with basically, I mean, how many wars? I mean, we're not really in any condition. The world is not in any position to really be in any major war. I mean, we have skirmishes, we have, you know, obviously, you know, you have your unsanctioned wars that we're in, but in the big picture, the world is a lot less war torn than it used to be. So what is the real need for the military? Well, you got to create a need by saying, well, we've dominated the land, we've dominated the sea, we've dominated the sky, so let's dominate the planet. We need something that is the ultimate high ground. That's the thought process, I think, is what's behind the government. Is we need the ultimate high ground, so let's hype up a new possible threat and be ahead of the curve. Yeah, be ahead of the curve on just... Yeah, you need the ultimate advantage, so why not space?
Well, I think you're partially right there. And also, if you look at the fact that I think it was the Lockheed Martin, their stock dropped dramatically once North Korea decided that they were going to, I guess, cooperate and denuclearize. And so when you have the threats that start to go away because the human race in general has become more civilized and less warlike, then you've got to have these military contractors start building something. And in order for the politicians, in order to keep getting money from these contractors, then they have to have something for them to do and have to have a reason for them in order to, you know, keep that machine going. And so we're not going to be building new fighter jets and new nuclear bombs because we're the peacekeepers now, and we're not in any active, you know, large scale wars. So let's focus that on going to space, because there is a vast amount of resources we can throw at that and show very little results, and the public will be happy with that. I mean, let's look at this realistically too. Okay, the United States has not been, or no one has been back to the moon since 1972. So for 3 years we had some moon landings, and we had some moon exploration. Since then, we've, I think, crashed a probe onto the moon. We've sent some vehicles there, but we haven't landed a man on the moon in more than 40 years. So we can have the government tell us, oh, yes, it's going to cost us $50 billion in order to send the next man to the moon. And you're going to have the public just say, well, okay, let's go ahead and do that because that sounds really good. Because we want to land on the moon again. So, you know, you do have that perception, and all you have to do is you play to the inner child there, and then you can basically, the government can spend as much money as they want because they're playing to fantasy at this point.
Well, now does anyone know why we went to the moon in the first place?
To beat the Soviets. We had to land on the moon before the Soviets landed on the moon.
Yeah. And guess what? Now they're meddling in our elections, and we gotta go to space.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's to protect the ballot box.
Protect the ballot box. So we gotta go to space.
Protect the ballot box.
Protect our elections from space.
Amazing how that all plays out, right?
If Trump played that card and said, to protect our elections from the Russians, we need more space.
That would be hilarious.
He would win 2 more terms.
How
Because they would make it happen.
No, you can't do that. There is some limitations here, buddy.
No. We have to keep the extraterrestrial aliens from coming in. Build that dome. Build that dome.
Yes.
I'm not
make the Martians
how the
pay
fuck
for
would
it.
the control have to react on this?
And then,
would they
the next thing you know,
say the meddling doesn't happen, or would they completely then side with Trump for some reason?
We'll protect the great dome.
That brain was great.
Dome you've ever seen, and I think we'll call it the Astrodome.
I wonder if there's some I wonder if there's some hillbilly somewhere that really thinks he got abducted by aliens one night. He's writing letters to Trump right now, like, get that bastard for me.
Could you imagine?
I noted that when the aliens that come and took me and the anal probed me, that hurt a little bit, and now you gotta go get them suckers.
Justice for Jimbo.
The new lock her up will be for the Borg Queen.
The Queen from Alien.
Or the Queen from Alien. There we go.
Yeah. Lock her up would be the Queen from Alien. That is the new lock her up chant.
Some sort of insect bug alien queen.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like Starship Troopers, and Trump's gonna build his wall, and he's like, the only way the Mexicans are getting over the fence if they serve in the Space Force.
Service guarantees citizenship.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
I'm doing my part.
Have you all seen the?
That movie was even focused on Central Americans and South Americans. So.
Yep, it was. It did. It took place somewhere. What country was that?
He was in Buenos Aires.
Yep, Buenos Aires. Yep. Argentina. Yeah, that's where that movie took place. Have you all seen the potential logo for the Space Force? There's one with a picture of a space shuttle going towards what looks like red rocks, and it says Mars awaits. What is that all about? Have you seen that?
Isn't that not that one from what's that guy's name again? I
don't know.
There's many going to Mars movies though.
Too many going to Mars movies. Oh my gosh, we could talk about Space Force for hours. We could do a 12-hour long live stream and just be Space Force jokes, but we have way too much to talk about. Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson is back in politics. We all thought that he was going to go away forever, but Gary Johnson is running for the Senate out of New Mexico, where he was once governor. He served, I believe, 2 terms as governor. He cut the budget however many times. I don't know.
He's running for
talks
what?
about that all the time. For Senate out of New Mexico.
What's the Senate?
U.S. Senate.
No, I was trying to remember what's.
Right.
What's the Senate?
Yeah. What is it
we had a meme last week about this is before he even announced that he ran for Senate in Mexico and not New Mexico because he got confused, stoned, or whatever. Landed in Mexico.
Wrong turn at Albuquerque. Wound up in Mexico.
Yep.
Became a member of the Mexican Senate. No, but the Libertarian candidate who was supposed to run ended up dropping out. Libertarian Party asked Gary Johnson if he would run on the Libertarian ticket for the Senate, and he has agreed to do it. So Gary Johnson is back in politics. Now, the current senator who's there right now is Martin Heinrich. He is up for re-election. He is up against a Republican nobody, somebody that no one's ever heard of. I don't know if this guy even has a website, to be honest with you. This probably tells you just how serious the Senate election is in New Mexico, where the Republican candidate probably isn't even trying. But the question is, could Gary Johnson, running as a Libertarian, be elected to the Senate from the state where he was once governor?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Honestly,
A
I
lot
think
of-
it's got a good chance.
The real question then is, how much of an impact could that have, not just on the Senate, but how much of an impact could that create for the Libertarian Party if you have an elected Libertarian go to Congress?
It could be huge, but also it's still Gary Johnson. So, I mean, it could actually make us look bad.
I mean,
But it can't make us look any worse than. I mean, I'm not in the party. I shouldn't say us, but you know, I'm pretty much always voting Libertarian at some point. So
I think it would be a huge boost, and I think that it would show that a Libertarian can actually win on a national level. And
right,
also, with that being said, if he does win, I think it'll be great for the 2020 race, because whoever turns out to be the presidential nominee in 2020 would have the possibility of getting a high enough percentage in the national polls to get on the debate stage. And once you get a Libertarian on the debate stage for the presidential debates, the whole dynamic changes at that point, because then the party becomes more legitimate to the rest of the country that just kind of see it as being a fringe and not worthy of their vote because they think they're throwing their vote away. If you can get on that debate stage, everything changes.
we need. Well, the thing is as much as we need a presidential candidate in 2020, it can't be Gary Johnson.
Oh no, I didn't say him.
right.
No, I know. I'm just thinking like
Whoever it might be.
But even just, I'm thinking about him in the Senate. Like, as much as it'd be great for him to win, I'm thinking on this discussion I heard on the Joe Rogan's podcast. Someone was saying like, yeah, he's a libertarian. Yes, he has great ideas, but he sucks at talking about them. He's not someone that gets people. He's not someone that gets someone hyped about libertarianism.
Right.
You know, it's like imagine he used this example. Imagine Gary Johnson as an abolitionist towards the end of slavery. And this is how he would go. He goes, "Well, I just think it's just not the most efficient way of picking cotton." And it's like, that's not how you're going to change things. You have to be someone like, Ron Paul and Rand Paul. That's like, this is how it is. And this is wrong. We can't do it this, like, actually telling people like what is right and wrong with what government does. He's just kind of, well, libertarians are just, socially liberal and fiscally conservative. It's like, no one cares.
Yeah, Gary Johnson is rather bland when it comes to giving his message. I mean, he kind of did a sleepwalk through 2016. And honestly, I mean, his downfall was the whole "what is Aleppo" moment. And then there was also that thing of when he was doing that interview and then talking with his tongue out. I still don't understand what he was trying to do there. I mean, Gary Johnson is awkward. He's bland. But
I mean, I understand what his point was with the tongue thing. His whole point there was that if he did an entire interview with his tongue sticking out, then that was the only way people would listen to him. Absolutely right, though, because in order for the mainstream media to give him any type of coverage, he had to do something that was so outrageous that it would be picked up. If it wasn't for the "what is Aleppo," half the country wouldn't even know who he was.
Right. Yeah, I agree there.
Right.
I mean, but just imagine him in the Senate chamber, by next year going, Well, I just think, going to space with these ships and all this military, no one's going to take him seriously.
Yeah, but
Spot on with his points, but he'll just be like,
visibility.
I think.
Yeah,
Hey,
you
Johnson,
don't get
in
you don't
Congress,
get
though.
to bring his boyfriend with him.
Bill Weld. Yeah.
It ain't a two-seater.
Well,
right.
how about this, guys? For 2020, I'm willing to go to the convention and go for the nomination for a presidential candidate if Mike will come with me as the vice presidential nominee.
Yeah, Mike, go with him as the vice presidential nominee.
And if you win, you will make a new seat in the cabinet, Secretary of Memes.
Secretary of Propaganda.
Yes. Secretary of Propaganda, absolutely. But you know what? Having Gary in the Senate, it puts, for one thing, it puts a different kind of voice in Congress. And not only that, but, you also, instead of having, things that are, where we start talking about bipartisanship, for one thing, it can open up a new avenue to a thing called tripartisanship. I mean, it puts a third perspective into Congress. I mean, we have so many things of, the GOP with their agenda, the Democrats with their agenda. Well, if you put a third person in there, that just throws a wrench into everything, and it throws everything. I just think it could really shake up what's going on in Congress right now. Not only that, but there are a lot of issues in the country that not just libertarians care about, but what people all across the spectrum care about. Marijuana reform is something we've talked about. Prison reform, criminal justice reform are things that we've talked about. If you can get a new perspective into Congress and talking about those things, how does that shape the government and the country going forward?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, you even look at in Europe, even though they're all like raving socialists over there. No offense, Madness.
I know there are a lot of fucking retards
but
there
they
at
least have multiple parties. It's not two parties. There's like 5, 6, 7 parties, and like 2 or 3
or like 20 parties. They had like 20 fucking parties. Way too fucking much.
The parliament
but
system.
at least they have like 4 dominant parties instead of like 1 or 2.
Yeah, but I mean, not only that, but I mean, if you can get if you can get a third party, as an actual legitimate party and not just viewed as a fringe party, like is what it's called, that just creates so many more options for voters. What is is another thing. I mean, it just I just think that all these people who call themselves pro-choice in the country should actually be actual pro-choice people and be all about more choice. I mean, not just on one issue, but on several issues. So, and another thing too is that if you look at how these primaries are playing out, and last week last week here in Missouri, we had our primary for Senate, and Austin Peterson was the guy that I voted for. He didn't fare very well. It's unfortunate, but one thing that I really don't like about how this primary is playing out is that I don't like that President Trump is trying to pick the winners before the primaries even happen. I mean, President Trump went to Kansas City 6 weeks or so ago, whenever the VFW had, I think that was like their 100th anniversary. Donald Trump went to that to speak. He used the VFW's event to promote Josh Hawley, who ended up winning the GOP primary here. He promoted Josh Hawley ahead of the primary because he wants Josh Hawley in Congress. He put out a tweet, I think it was yesterday, where he's talking about how the Republicans have won 8 of 9 special elections, and he said, "We are getting the team we want." I just see so many, because for one thing, Donald Trump is not permanent in our government. Donald Trump is head of state. He is a temporary head of state. He's going to be here for a while. He's going to be gone either in 2 years, or he's going to be gone in 6 years. You don't really know. But the thing is that he's not staying. The people who are getting elected, Josh Hawley, if he is elected to the Senate, his first term won't end until Donald Trump's potential second term ends. And then he's going to run for re-election. And then after Donald Trump is gone, you're going to have Josh Hawley and all these other people staying in Congress. I mean, it's not up to the president to decide who should win an election. It's up to the voters. I just think that, let the primaries play themselves out and then endorse your party's candidate. I mean, isn't it the way it's supposed to be?
I mean,
or am I wrong?
Yeah.
Isn't
well, no, what? No.
I hear an echo.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say is is there any real rule or law against him just talking positively and promoting anyone?
Well, I don't think there is, but at the same time, I don't think it's very ethical.
Right.
I do not.
I'm gonna play a little whataboutism here and just say,
okay.
Nancy Pelosi has been doing the same thing. I don't know if you guys saw the clip of her. She was speaking at some event, basically saying, during the midterms, we need to win more seats so we can leverage their immigration policies of basically allowing in, more, just being more open borders versus more stricter restrictions on immigration. And I mean, she just straight up just said, we need more Democrats in so we can leverage our policy. And
that's just her campaigning for her
primary.
Party. Yeah, that's just her campaigning for her party. I mean,
but she is the one who is very high up in the Democratic Party, as is Trump.
It's a primary though. Like, so he's basically backing one Republican over another Republican, and I don't even think Trump knows who Josh Hawley is. It's probably he has a committee. He's like, oh, like I got to make a statement. Who's my guy? What's the guy's name? Oh, Josh Hawley. Yeah, Josh Hawley. That's the guy. All right, next.
Yeah, but I mean, that example you just gave, that's just Nancy Pelosi just campaigning for the Democrat Party. I mean, Democrats are making a really hard push to try to take Congress back because they're trying to fight against Donald Trump's agenda. That's to be expected. But, it would be different if Nancy Pelosi is going out and picking out one Democrat candidate from each state's primary because for some reason that one Democrat candidate is more special than the other ones. This is what you have Donald Trump doing. I mean, he's not doing this just, with congressional primaries. He did the same thing, like Kansas as an example. Chris Kobach, who's the Secretary of State, just unseated their governor in their primary. And Donald Trump had already endorsed Chris Kobach. He wants Chris Kobach to be the governor of Kansas for whatever reason.
Well, yeah,
I just don't.
Florida.
I just don't understand why he's doing this. During the primaries. I mean, what makes Josh Hawley so much more special than the other Republicans running in Missouri?
Maybe because he's not Austin Peterson.
Okay, and
maybe the guy just said nice things about Trump.
I mean, in the reverse too, I'm seeing a lot of campaign commercials that are coming out that are basically saying is instead of having like, here's my policies, it's I'm following the president.
Yeah, basically they try to kiss his ass, and those get more responses from him. So,
well, if you look at Trump's statements and his tweets, they're all basically the same. It's I'm supporting this candidate because they're strong on borders, they're tough on crime, and they're a really, really good person. Vote for this person bigly.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
And you know what the thing that sucks is? Because basically in my state is you got Liz Warren, and then you got basically a Trump guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm gonna have to vote. I'm gonna have to vote for the Trump guy just because I'm trying to get rid of Elizabeth Warren. That's hard. That's hard ethically to do.
Are you discriminating against Native Americans?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yes, Donald Trump does want people in Congress who Donald Trump does want people in Congress who do say nice things about him. He is not going to get that with Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson already shared his opinion about Donald Trump during the 2016 election. Well, during the campaign, I should say. I'm not going to repeat what he said. He had a very choice word that he used to describe Trump. If you don't remember, you can look it up yourself later. Everyone here probably remembers what he said. I'm not going to say it.
I don't. I don't know.
But, you know, this is going to be something interesting to watch because right now this, what's his name? Martin Heinrich right now is polling at 47%. The Republican is at 27% and Gary Johnson is at 22%. But Gary Johnson just announced yesterday, so, you know, give him some time. He has.
And the thing is the Republican, he seems like a nobody. Like, I was looking him up. He doesn't have a Wikipedia page. Like, I basically looked at all the sites and there was like nothing. Like, you couldn't even find his stances anywhere. And it's like, who the hell?
All I'm able to find
guy?
about him is that he's a construction worker. He is a construction worker, and that's all I'm able to find about him. I found nothing else about this Republican candidate.
Yeah, so like, is he even someone? Company. So with that, does that now become Gary Johnson versus Democrat? I think that's the big question. Because if this guy's a nobody, like, you know, because Trump, I mean, Clinton won in that state in the presidential election. Donald Trump got 40%. Gary Johnson got like 10% or whatever. But if that Republican is a nobody, it's not Donald Trump. It's, you know, no one's even heard of him. Mm-hmm. Are they going to go with Gary Johnson? Are all the Republicans going to go with Gary Johnson because the other guy's a nobody? Or are they going to vote Republican?
Well, what I was saying is that Gary Johnson could win over. I would say he could possibly win over a lot of supporters that he had when he ran for governor and then when he ran for re-election, you know.
Right.
If those supporters are still there, he could win those over. I was reading that he could win over conservative Hispanic Democrats in New Mexico, as well as, you know, other people, and then, you know, other voters from the GOP. So maybe he could unseat this Democrat who's in the Senate right now.
Yeah, because I mean that's
possible.
I mean he can. He's I'm not sure about how this Democrat is that's running for New Mexico, but you know, even Gary Johnson's a lot more liberal on the issues than a lot of Democrats and a lot of the things that Democrats look to as far as voting for someone. So it's like, you know, you got no viable Republican candidate, like you said, guy's a construction worker. Not construction workers, but you know, no Wikipedia page, you know, the whole 9 yards. If it becomes versus Democrat, and Gary Johnson is pulling the Democrat votes away, it is very, despite what all the libertarians want to think about. Oh, he'll never get it done.
I don't know. I just think that it's not as far-fetched as what people are going to make it out to be. I think even if Gary Johnson doesn't win, I think he still does have an impact on that race. I do think that the Democrat, you know, Heinrich is going to have to take this seriously. He's not just going to cruise when he would otherwise cruise if Gary Johnson was not running. So even if Gary Johnson doesn't win, I do think that he could, you know, at least create some type of momentum for a third party going forward. That's just something to keep an eye on between now and November. This past weekend, we had a protest in Washington, D.C. It was all of about maybe 10 people that showed up to it. The Unite the Right rally. It was 1 year after Charlottesville. Now, we all remember the scenes from Charlottesville last year. White guys in khakis with tiki torches marching through the streets. And, you know, we all made a lot of jokes about it, but it was disturbing. I mean, it was disturbing. You know, a bunch of white supremacists marching in mass, talking about Jews, talking about whatever else they were talking about. It was disturbing. Second time around, it was a whole bunch of nothing. But Antifa made an appearance with their faces covered like they always do. They attack media, they attack cops, and you guys
still defend them.
just, how much longer is this going to go before the Nazis and the commies have a huge clash? I mean, seriously.
Well, here's what I think on that, real quick, because when you look at the numbers, you see we'll just say alt-right. So when you see the alt-right do these marches, they do these things. From what I've seen, what I've heard, they're just practicing their First Amendment rights. Yes, they have some pretty dangerous ideologies. Yes, it's really shitty and racist, and it's disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I hear is they're just out there, with their tiki torches or not without their tiki torches, waving some pretty offensive flags, Nazi or otherwise, doing their own thing. And Antifa is the one that starts the fight. It's like, so I mean, the closest thing I can see it at, I can compare it to, is a couple of European comic writers drawing Muhammad and getting assaulted by thousands upon thousands of Muslims. I mean, not to make any comment on that specific thing, but I mean, you see the numbers. Some people have some slightly offensive, well, I shouldn't say slightly, some very offensive views to another group of people. And you have this narrative that is further, they talk about emboldening racism and white supremacism. And there probably is that to a degree. But I think the bigger picture is the backlash from Trump has emboldened the left a lot more, where you have these Antifa groups that are in the hundreds and thousands, where you'll have 30 white supremacists. Yeah, you have 30 white supremacists, if that, waving some flags, saying some pretty nasty stuff, and 1,000 Antifa members try to kill every last one of them. And then the news story becomes hundreds of white supremacists showed up, and Antifa got caught in it. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris Cuomo was talking about this on CNN the other night, and he was talking about basically the whole point of his little monologue or whatever it was that leading into it, was talking about how there's no moral equivalence between Antifa and between the white supremacists. Now, he condemned Antifa for what they did, as far as, attacking people. But then he goes into this thing about how, punching a white supremacist in the face is not as bad as a white supremacist being hateful or whatever it was that he was trying to explain. I mean, it made no sense. It made absolutely no sense. And Chris Cuomo, at least, in my own opinion, he sounded like an idiot trying to explain this. But,
regardless of the comparison, yeah, regardless of the comparison of the two ideologies between anti-fascists, commies, and Nazis, you could take a while trying to break down and see which one is technically worse than the other. But I think the defining point that makes one way worse than the other is the record that has been set that Antifa has usually been the one that has incited the violence, beat people up, and in some cases sent people to the hospital. So I think in practice, Antifa is a lot worse than these white supremacists. And that makes them the bad guy. As much as you can, like I said, try to compare the two, Antifa is now has to be the bad guy because they're the ones that have actually committed violence at a larger scale.
Well, see, here's the problem.
And because they are.
Yeah, here's the problem. The media is coming at this with, well, the white supremacists are preaching hate, where Antifa is just against fascism, so they say. But they're not looking at their actual actions. They're not looking at the fact that Antifa is shutting down free speech. They're not looking at the fact that these Antifa people are just some of the most ignorant, stupidest people that you come across. They're all hiding their faces. And quite honestly, I would rather have someone who is blatantly racist right up there in your face that shows me who they are than someone that says that they're fighting for their freedom and their anti-fascism if they're hiding their face. because the person that's racist, I can see that person and say, you're a racist, get the hell away from me. The person that's hiding their face, if I see them the next day and they're not wearing their mask, I don't know who they are. So I would much rather have the open racist than the violent person that's hiding behind a mask.
If
Not only
anything,
that,
the racists know their rights better than the leftists.
That's true, and the other problem too is that when these people cover their faces up, it kind of emboldens them to go ahead and commit more violence and commit these acts of vandalism. When I think it was Seattle where they arrested like 20 of these Antifa people, they published all of their mugshots, and these people pissed all over themselves, saying, "No, no, no, don't publish that. I don't want people to see who I am." Well, if you're going to go out there and do something stupid, then you need to be seen. People need to see who you are, so that way they can retaliate against your dumbass the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And Antifa are the ones. We always talk about Nazis, and we always associate it with World War II and the Holocaust and the concentration camps. And yes, that was awful. Yes, that was absolutely awful, and it was deplorable. But that is not happening today.
Nope.
Sure, you have people who might be, telling their opinions about the Jewish people, but they're not rounding them up and they're not killing them en masse. You have people on the left with Antifa who are committing the violence now. So,
and a lot of Antifa members are not pro-Jews as well, by the way.
Yeah, like mostly these and it's not like the ones that actually show up to the rallies. It's the ones you see in the chat rooms and stuff like that. That everything's focused on. And what's that site called? 4chan or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like these kids are just like kids living in their basements playing video games. Like they pose no threat to society at all. Like they may go shoot up a school or something, but obviously you have a gun right there. You shoot that kid before he fucking has a chance. Not to get into that argument, but you know what I'm saying. It's like they're not going to mobilize and into the brown shirts and start taking people in. That they're not capable of that.
You are correct, and they're not going to put their video game controllers down because that's all they do. But
I remember there was when they interviewed a few couple of those Antifa members, they even was telling like the old whites want to steal the video games. And there was one of the reasons why they joined Antifa. I'm like, that's one of the dumbest reasons I've ever fucking heard.
Still the video games. I don't know. Honestly, I think a lot of people, and on the right, I think they need a timeout. This Friday, August 17th, Deacta Day. A lot of people will be taking a timeout.
The name still starts so
people on the left.
Deacta Gay.
Yes. People on the left are upset that Alex Jones has not been banned from Twitter's platform. So they're going to deactivate their accounts, and they're going to give Twitter 30 days. They're going to give Twitter 30 days to ban Alex Jones. If they don't do it in 30 days, these people are going to completely delete their accounts. Now, I kind of understand where they're going with this because, if you have a lot of people leave Twitter, Twitter is going to suffer. I mean, you already saw it happen with Facebook. I mean, Facebook's stock dropped billions. I don't know how many billions it was, but Facebook took a really big hit. The same thing might happen to Twitter if a lot of people leave. However, spending a normal day on Twitter, if a lot of these people left Twitter would be very nice, and Twitter would be pleasant because Twitter is
a lot of people who's gonna take the days off from Twitter. A lot of them are addicted to it. Meaning, I don't think if a lot of them will be able to stay off it for that long. A lot of them will drop back.
This might be just
somewhere else.
Yeah, they'll complain on another platform, but a normal day on Twitter is a big digital jungle, and it is a big digital hateful jungle. I mean, all you got to do is just speak your opinion, And you're not going to have a discussion with someone. You're going to have an actual fight with someone over Twitter, because all you got to do is just type the wrong thing, and all of a sudden you have a lot of people yelling at you because you're thinking wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Twitter is funny like that. I don't know. This could be interesting though. If this does in fact happen, it might just be a couple of days, and all of a sudden they're back because they couldn't handle being away from Twitter for so long, or they could be serious about this.
Some of them will at least go back because addiction. Without a doubt, a lot of them will come back.
Here's a question for you, though. Here's a question for you. Is it now? If this does happen, is this mob rule, or is this the free market dictating because they want Alex Jones gone?
Well, it depends if it works or not. I mean, it's kind of a silly concept because it's basically, I think I should have the freedom to go onto your platform and not see something. Like
the thing is that if there's something that you don't like on Twitter, there is a way to make it go away.
Yeah, you can block it. I mean,
yeah, it's called the block button.
They have every right to do this little protest, of course, but it's just like, why? Like, why Alex Jones? It's like, he's a funny man. Leave him alone.
Well, it's because he's been banned from so many platforms already, and they accuse Alex Jones of using hate speech. They accuse Alex Jones of being on the alt-right, which he's not on the alt-right. I don't even know what he belongs to be honest. I mean, he likes Trump, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's on the right. Honestly, I don't know what Alex Jones is.
He's a rare breed. And
he is. Like, 1776.
We're always so quick to discredit him, right? Has anyone ever checked on the frogs? Have we ever checked on the frogs?
Okay,
are the frogs actually gay?
I heard. Okay. So there was something where he did the whole gay frog thing, but then someone found out a couple years later that there were like frogs that were being affected, or some marine life was being affected by some dumping, and it made them like transgender or something.
It caused male frogs to turn female, and then the female frogs were mating with the male frogs. I mean, all Alex Jones did was he took an actual thing and he put a spin on it by saying that the chemicals were turning the frogs gay. They were making the frogs turn from male to female, and then they were acting like female frogs and mating with male frogs.
So you could say, I mean, as crazy as the gay frogs thing is, yes, he put a spin on it, but he was on this. I mean, frogs did change. Chemicals were used. I mean, I mean, people making comments about how Donald Trump is probably pretty incendiary with the comments he makes, and some people make the conclusion that he's a racist, and then, well, there is some truth to what what he's saying is being portrayed that way. So I think it's the same way. There's a spin on what he's saying versus a spin on how Alex Jones does news.
Yeah.
If you want to call it that. I call it entertainment. I mean, there have been times where I watched Alex Jones because I want to hear what he had to say. Alex Jones had a big statement out. Was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. Yesterday, Infowars.com, their domain was pulled temporarily. Now, I think that they did this themselves. This is just me. This is my own opinion. I think that they did this just because they wanted to really feed that whole, banned narrative of Alex Jones being censored. But he had a 10-minute long rant where he was talking about how, Apple has moved over to China and Google has moved over to China, and China is working with Democrats now to try to censor speech in America, and we all need to wake up and all of this and that. I think InfoWars pulled their own domain.
So Apple and Google moved to China, and China is moving to America?
Exactly. Yes. You know what?
That little that clip that he made in response to being banned was you will never be God.
You know what? This all seems confusing and it's hard to keep up with, but in the world of Alex Jones, it all makes sense.
I mean,
Of course,
when you have that much male vitality in your system, everything makes sense.
I saw people sharing that video that would never share like anything political. Usually, like the regular internet was eating it up.
Yeah.
I think you were right last week where it actually, I don't know what your opinion was, but you were saying how it could actually make him bigger. I think it worked.
Yeah. I think a lot more people are tuning into Alex Jones just because they want to hear what he has to say. I mean, and I don't think this is an act by Alex Jones, but if it was, Alex Jones would be a genius. But this is not an act. Alex Jones is just a very, very strange, disturbed man with lots of conspiracy theories, and he's being sued for one of them, unfortunately for him. But
so, you think that he pulled the InfoWars domain off to fuel his own set story?
I wouldn't be surprised if he did. I would not be surprised.
So, is this a conspiracy theory about the conspiracy theorist?
I think this is a self-fulfilling conspiracy theory. Yes, I think it is.
Conspiracy theorist.
Well, there was one thing with certain people already were saying, like, because he's such a big conspiracy theory person, and you try to silence him, make it only more seem you're afraid of him, make him seem like he's speaking the truth.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things where if you throw enough stuff at the wall, something's going to stick. So I think with Alex Jones, he's thrown out so many of these wacky theories that one of them might actually come true. But getting back to the Diacta Day or whatever the hell that nonsense is, one of the people that's really pushing this is Will Wheaton, and I don't know about you guys, but Will Wheaton has blocked me, and I've never had an interaction with him.
He's blocked me
and
too. Yeah,
seen
he's blocked me.
Wait.
I think he just proactively just goes through Twitter and finds anybody with libertarian anywhere on their page and just blocks them.
Hey, I'm not blocked by Will Wheaton.
So send him a kiss for me.
Yeah. Tell him I said hi.
Yeah, I am blocked by Will Wheaton. I have no clue to what I did to piss him off, but I just wanted to let him know to shut up, Wesley.
Tell him I said unblock me, because
Will
Wheaton. Yes, Will. Yeah.
Will.
I don't know, but Friday will be interesting. We'll see if they actually follow through with this. So they're going to try to get rid of Alex Jones. They're going to try to get rid of Wrong Think. They're going to try to get rid of so many things that they don't like. I guess this is the new strategy now. They are going to try to have the things they don't like banned. But there are three things that they will not ban, and we will make sure of that. The three things that will never be banned: life, liberty, and sarcasm. Everyone who watched with us, we appreciate you for watching. We will see you again next week. Good night, everyone.
Yep.
Hey, guys.
Good night.